So why is head shooting so contentious? We show you what can go wrong and demonstrate some alternative shot placement. Most deer management training advocates the traditional heart-long cavity shot, which is fine if you aim to consume the carcass yourself. However, those deer managers and contractors who cull high numbers of deer that are subsequently submitted to approved game handling establishments, that's AGHEs, will often choose to head shoot. This is because many AGHEs are increasingly demanding carcasses in top condition with minimal bullet contamination and impact to the carcass. But in the wild, there's a significant downside to head shooting. Whilst a marginally wayward shot to the heart and lung cavity of a deer will still result in a humanely dispatched animal, a misplaced headshot to the head can result in grotesque injuries that result in a protracted and agonizing death. Having recently been required to follow up on a number of instances where hunters have misplaced headshots, Paul Symons is changing the way that he does things. I catch up with Paul on Dorset's Jurassic coast during the height of the autumn rut. Now Paul, you're responsible for shooting, am I right in saying hundreds of deer every year, aren't you?
Yeah, I manage up to 11 estates now. Everything from fallow, roe and red. So there's a variety of species that we've got across the West Country.
And tell me, you have traditionally headshot, haven't you?
Yeah, especially in the last couple of years as I've been increasing numbers and supplying the human food chain. And with the increase in population of deer throughout the country, particularly fallow and the herding species, it's a case of supply and demand. If there's an excess of supply, those who are in demand can dictate what they want. And in this scenario, the game dealers are starting to really come down on non-lead headshot is what they require.
So what you're telling me is really, because you're putting so many hundreds of deer through the AGHEs, they want A1 condition carcasses, and A1 condition carcasses tends to be headshots.
Yeah,
is that
correct.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely right.
And tell everyone, why do they not want the typical chest shot?
They will lose in the region up to 20-25% of the carcass. Therefore, they see that as a shrinkage, an economic shrinkage. So they then demand A1 carcasses so they can utilise the whole product for the human food chain.
And presumably because they're getting less money out of the carcass, they give you less money for it as well.
Certainly, and that's nationwide as well. Many AGHDs are paying 50 pence a kilo for a chest shot animal. And if you
50 pence a
50
kilo.
pence a kilo, which is
and how does that contrast with a headshot?
Up to £2.50 in certain circumstances a kilo. And when you're talking large red deer, 100 kilogram animals, that's a significant economic difference.
Yeah, and I suppose if you're shooting hundreds of these animals,
it's a huge
and you've got sort of a 4 times, 5 times as much money for a headshot deer as a chest shot deer, that results in a significant extra return for you, doesn't it?
Correct, exactly. And if you look back 10 years ago when the population wasn't as high as it is now, we've probably doubled in that time. We were getting £2.60 a kilo for chest shot fallow 10 years ago. Now we're getting 50 pence a kilo, 20% of the value for the same product. So
I suppose, when you look at professional deer managers or people who've got contracts to cull a lot of deer, there's a lot of pressure on them to head shoot, isn't there?
Yeah, huge pressures. And it's not only just the professionals as well. We're seeing large amounts of syndicates around the country. I'm not going to name them, but the large amounts of syndicates that require headshot deer. So you get novice stalkers straight into a syndicate, paying for the privilege, and it's a great thing to get into, but they're automatically put into a head shooting scenario when they may not have the experience or even the confidence to do that. And that then brings in welfare questions. Ultimately, as stalkers, we have an obligation and a requirement to consider the welfare of the animal as number one. Yeah.
And am I right in saying, Paul, that when you take headshots, you're tending to do it at slightly closer ranges, aren't you?
Mainly woodland, yeah. It's mainly for myself. I know that others differ. The land that I manage is predominantly woodland, so you get in sub 100. And the scenario with head shooting is I would always either back of the head or looking straight on. The reason being, if it's at the side of the head and the bullet drops and I've overestimated the range, the risk of drawing that animal is just too high.
Now that's something I think that's really important, and I was just about to ask you about that question. So let's go over that again, because I think that's an important one. If you do choose to head shoot, you don't want to be doing it with a sideways on profile, do you?
Absolutely. Correct. It's risking the welfare of the animal. So you get the animal's attention, you let out a whistle, a bark, a shout, whatever. The animal will look at you, ideally, and if you shoot the main head of the animal, if it's too low, it's going to neck it. If it's going to go too high, you're going to miss. So you are reducing the risk, but why have that risk in the first place when you can remove that risk? Because ultimately, this is welfare. This is the welfare of the beast we're talking about.
I think it's a really interesting point, and I think some of those syndicates who are encouraging beginners and recreational stalkers to head shoot are tending to do something with the carcasses. These carcasses aren't going off to the same consumer that shot them, are they? They're not going off to the stalker. They're going back to the larder, and then they're being sold for a profit to an AGHE or a butcher or whatever. And that's where the demand to head shoot comes in,
Correct.
isn't it?
Back to supply and demand. If there's infinite supply, they can cherry pick what they want. And if they say, I want headshot deer with monolithic or non-toxic ammunition, then that's what they get. And ultimately you're risking the welfare of the animal if a person isn't competent or experienced enough to do that. So
I mean, you and I know that when you head shoot or when you take any shot, that bullet is never coming out the end of your barrel in a straight line, is it? It's in a constant curve of trajectory, isn't it? So it's probably going to rise above the line of sight and then drop over it and then descend below. So estimating range is very important because that can have an effect on your shot placement, as is windage, isn't it?
Huge.
And this, I imagine, is why when you are head shooting, you keep your ranges to a minimum.
Exactly that. Stable firing platform that's sub 100 yards, and with the animal looking at you as well. And obviously with a safe backstop, making sure the animal's clear, because largely these are herding animals, and you've had to wait. We've all done it. You've had to wait a number of minutes for the animal to become clear once you've selected the correct creature to dispatch that animal humanely.
But you and I know that things can still go wrong.
They do.
The deer can turn at the last minute, or quite honestly, you can just be having a bad day. And I know if I'm on the range, perhaps 1 in 10 shots is going to be a bit of a flyer, isn't it?
Yeah.
And if you get that flyer, or if you've had a bad day, or the animal twitches or moves, then potentially you've got an injured animal, haven't you?
Correct. I mean, ultimately, bad shooting comes down to 3 variables: ammunition performance failure, pilot error, or mechanical failure. One of those 3 things will cause the shot to not go where you want. And I would suggest in 95%, maybe even more, it's pilot error causes the problem.
And the repercussions of a poorly shot or a poorly placed headshot can be grotesque, can't they?
Vile.
And I understand that recently you've followed up on a few instances where hunters have misplaced those headshots. Just tell viewers a little bit about the repercussions.
Well, it's 6 occasions recently, all on fallow deer, all where I've either been called out by a business that a deer has gone into their land and is sat by water, its jaw hanging off. I've had one of the residents ring me with a fallow pricket in her garden, had went into a garden, probably trying to access the pond, and I suggest it's a cause of dehydration because they can't get the fluid and they just want the water. Terrible injury on the face. On every occasion I've had to dispatch that animal largely with a knife, which means I can walk up to it. It's in that bad a condition. And frankly, the deer are, we love them, we don't want them to suffer, they don't deserve to suffer. So it's made me really reconsider my way of doing things.
And let's talk about that, because I think you're right. Having followed, and I followed up on a few deer which have been poorly shot, and it's not something you want to repeat, is it?
No.
And so I think I'm right in saying that recently you've looked at alternatives to head shooting, haven't you? And are perhaps falling now more in favour of a neck shot.
Yeah.
Tell viewers a little bit more about why you do that and why you think that that's a suitable alternative.
So the end result is still an A1 carcass. If you cut away the damaged meat, flesh, bone, whatever, you've still got a showroom condition carcass, so you're still getting premium pricing. Secondly, it's very largely just as humane. You're either going to get immediate mortality caused by catastrophic central nervous system trauma, or if you're not going to hit the bone and you hit the carotid artery, the animal bleeds out equally as quickly as a chest shot, if not quicker.
So what you're telling me is that neck shooting effectively has all the benefits of still being able to produce an A1 carcass for game handling establishments.
Yeah. But
the chances of getting it wrong are just that little bit less, aren't they?
That little bit less. And if it does go wrong, God forbid, if it does go wrong, you've still, the animal's not going to run anywhere. You've damaged the neck muscles, which mean it can't run, it can't do anything, it falls to the ground, and then you can very quickly dispatch it. And we've discussed this before, when you're dispatching an animal, it's no longer about venison, it's about humanity. Yeah. And you then, at that stage, if it's ever happened once, twice, you immediately return to the traditional heart-lung shot just to get that animal out of its misery. And that one doesn't go to the danger.
And I think that's a really important point to get across, isn't it? Yeah. Because you and I will have seen neck shots that have gone wrong, and I've seen deer just effectively just nicking the side. And it's the best way I can describe it is it's a bit like a heavyweight boxer that's been knocked out with a punch. Yeah. He falls to the ground for a few seconds and then gets back up, staggers to his feet, and off he goes again. Yeah. So I think the point to get across, which I would say to people, is whenever you are neck shooting, it's really important to just stay on that animal and be ready to dispatch it with a second shot if you need to.
100%, exactly. So it's a steady nerve is required as well. So don't always assume the animal's down. Now there are occasions, and we've got some footage, where the injuries are catastrophic, straight in the neck snapped, dead animal, fine, brilliant. The larger species, especially red stag, big rutty fallow bucks where you've got large strong muscle tissue there, it can cause paralysis immediately, but not immediate mortality, so you've got to be prepared to follow that up. Big heavy calibers are needed too, sticking away from the 243 now, going to sort of your 30 cals and your big 6.5 PLC.
Is that because you're struggling with non-lead ammunition that's compliant to the Deer Act, I imagine, as well, though, isn't it?
Exactly that. We need that energy to put the animal down. So
tell me something. So with neck shooting, you mentioned with the head shooting that it's important to have an animal that's looking at you or looking away. But with neck shooting, is there any particular point that you're looking for in the animal, or do you want the animal to be stood in any particular position?
As long as the animal's still, because obviously the heads will move, quite significantly. And still with head shooting, with chest shooting, with neck shooting, I'll always let out a shout, an oi, a you, a bark, whatever. The animal stops, it looks at you, and when you've got a vertical line to shoot down, on a fallow deer, for example, and a Sika, you've got quite a large neck. So I'll stick it either right in the middle of the neck or right under the atlas joint, pull the trigger, and if I've overestimated, it's still going to hit the neck. If I've underestimated, it's going to go where?
Because that's another important to point out, isn't it? So with a neck shot, you're looking effectively at a high neck shot, usually.
Yeah. Do pick low ones occasionally, but where the range is a lot closer, because if I've underestimated it, then the bullet will go higher. Close range shooting in the woodland is particular for that. And what you can then do is, once you've dispatched the animal, you also got issues with the gralloch as well, because the esophagus could be damaged. So you need to prepare yourself out, okay, how am I going to cross this bridge when we've come to it?
I'm interested that you tell me that AGHE still regard these as top grade A1 carcasses, and that is presumably because the meat that they're getting off the neck is much less valuable than it is when you're looking at the shoulders, the loins, the back straps, all that sort of area.
Exactly, and if you look at the anatomy of a deer, you've got the cervical spine, and the muscle that's around it's a very tough muscle. It needs a lot of cooking, it needs slow cooking techniques. So mostly, in my experience, they just go straight through the grinder. So they're not losing much in terms of end product.
Now I've noticed we've been looking at quite a lot of footage while we've been talking of some of the shots that you've been taking recently, and some of the shots that I've taken down here on Sika just over the last couple of days. And clearly some of those are taken when it's dark. Now, you and I know that the law allows for shooting 1 hour before sunrise to 1 hour after sunset.
Yeah.
How do we account for that?
The first and last 20 minutes of the time period in which you've just discussed is pitch black. You know, we are 40 minutes after sunset is dark. Anyone who's stalked sort of herding species know they come out at that point, because traditionally glass is no longer any good. They know they're safe. That's my opinion anyway. Technology's changed. 10 years ago we started seeing thermals that allowed us to see deer that ordinarily we couldn't. Therefore, the new digital scopes that are out there, Hick Micro, etc., they're quite a good one. They will allow extra light and that last 20 minutes and that first 20 minutes when the deer are far more active. We now have a technological advantage. And in this season, certainly since I've been doing it, I'm probably seeing 80% of my shots in the last 20 minutes.
I would agree with you.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I mean, we're down here on the Isle of Purbeck at the moment, and we've been shooting Sika down here. And just last night, for instance, those stags came out just as it was getting dark, just on the point of darkness, and you'd be struggling with regular optics, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
But one thing you notice when you heart and lung shoot deer, and this is important to point, is that deer is going to make a dash before it bleeds out. It's bleeding into the wound channel, the blood drains away from the brain, causing asphyxiation, and it drops and dies. But in a Sika deer, and they can be very hardy, they may get 100 yards shot through the heart. And then again though, thermal and night vision, particularly thermal in this instance, I think is really useful, isn't it? Because you don't need to worry about the fact that deer has charged off into the wood, because if you follow up on it with your thermal, you're going to pick up that heat signature and still be able to retrieve it, aren't you?
Exactly, and you can even do that once you've waited your customary 5 minutes. If the temperature allows, you can actually follow the blood trail on the floor with the thermal. So, you know, you're using technology again to recover the animal. You will just follow the blood trail, you will come across it. Sika especially, they don't like dying, they like to run. They're a hardy.
They are hardy deer, aren't they?
Tough beast, you know. So you've got to be prepared to deal with that situation, and also that then raises questions about the legality of it. Now, someone with maybe less experience or another opinion may say, actually, I think what Peter and Paul are doing is wrong there. I might make a phone call. So you need to be prepared as a stalker to justify your actions and prepare yourself and protect yourself. So I timestamp all of my videos. I do it via the internet. That's one good piece of evidence that you are obeying the law. Secondly, whenever I fired a shot, I'll send a quick message to the estate via, you know, app or text message, whatever. That's a timestamp. That 1 down, 2 down, whatever. And then I'll try and follow that animal up and get the photograph of the animal prior to last lawful shot. So the metadata from that photo covers you. So that's 3 very robust bits of evidence that you haven't done anything wrong. You've utilised technology to allow you to take the law to its full level.
It's to optimise the amount of time that you are legally permitted to shoot deer, isn't it?
Exactly that.
Let's be frank.
Exactly that.
And the reality is, you and I know that last 20 minutes in that hour period, or that first 20 minutes, were pretty redundant with traditional optics, weren't they?
Yeah.
Because I would have reckoned as a professional stalker that I would have maybe half an hour after sunset or half an hour before sunrise.
Even less in the woods.
And entirely right.
Yeah.
And then it's pretty pitch black, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you're not going to be shooting deer. But by allowing ourselves, utilising thermal and night vision technology, we can utilise that extra 20 minutes, half an hour of shooting.
Yeah.
And when we are trying to get deer numbers down, especially with you when you're culling such high numbers, hundreds of deer, you know, that extra 20 minutes, half an hour is probably going to account for most of your culls, I imagine.
Yeah, as I mentioned, 80% in this season alone is coming in the last 20 minutes, because I record everything. And I've looked at the cull charts, 80% is in the last 20 minutes. That's when the deer are active, that's when we are at a disadvantage, they're at the advantage, and this technology now brings us back into the game. There is other disadvantages to doing this. I want to make this point clear. Traditionally, when you are managing a herd, when you're managing a species, you're looking for the weakest genes, you're looking for the weakest animal, you're looking for the one to cull. If I was a wolf, which one would I take? Doing it in almost complete darkness, again within the time period, you don't have that opportunity. You can't tell which was the worst pricket. You can't tell if any of them are limping. You can't tell. So
we've got some lovely footage from last night, actually, of some Sika stag being shot, and it's quite interesting because you can pick up that they've got antlers, and you can pick up the better ones from the prickets. But really, if I was a stalking guy, where perhaps my client is really interested as to whether this is a 6-pointer or an 8-pointer, you're not going to get that level of detail, are you?
No, you're not. And you also have to be aware, while you're shooting in low light levels, make sure you've got the correct backstop. So if you're in unfamiliar territory, questions to be asked, I wouldn't do it. Are you sure as well that you've got no animal behind the one you're going to cull? So again, you're now flicking between infrared and thermal to make sure that this is a safe, reasonable, legitimate and correct shot. Because ultimately, we're taking the life of an animal roughly the same size as us. So we've got to do it correctly.
I think you're entirely right. There are safety implications. Once the light starts dropping, there are safety implications for that, and seeing what your backstop is like effectively. But there are advantages as well to thermal in that regard, aren't there? I mean, I had an incident the other day where I was scanning a deer, picked up the deer, and I could see very clearly through the thermal that 200 or 300 yards on there was a couple of people walking. Now, I wouldn't have been able to pick that up with traditional optics. So there are some advantages and disadvantages, I think, to this type of equipment.
Exactly that, and as you say, technology has advanced rapidly in the last decade, and we need to adjust our tactics and keep up with our tactics to make sure, A, we're utilising the technology to its fullest effect, and B, we are safe for the members of the public as well, because ultimately this is a dangerous game we're playing. We're dealing with very sharp knives, we're dealing with very powerful firearms that don't take prisoners, and we've got to get it right, and we owe it to the animals, we owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to the members of the public who may or may not be around to make sure that everything is safe. Reputation is really important, PR is really important, we've got to get it right.
We have. And for people out there, there's a night shooting course on the Shooting and Hunting Academy that is delivered by the National Gamekeepers Organisation. It's a really useful resource for those that are considering shooting at night, or simply for those that want to utilise that last 20 minutes, half an hour, as Paul has described, of maximising your available shooting. Can I be honest with you? I've noticed this trend towards head shooting, and still today I tend to, most of my shots are going to be heart and lung shots, okay? And most of the clients I take out are actually taking away that carcass. They are the end consumer, as it were, so there's little loss by taking a heart and lung shot. I've seen this trend towards head shooting, and for me, I kind of am a little bit concerned that sometimes it tracks almost a certain machismo, a sort of macho attitude. I'm such an A1 shot, I'm such a good marksman, I can nail that deer in the head every single time. And you and I know that you can't do it every single time, and everyone gets it wrong from time to time. Would you agree with me that there's slightly a macho attitude?
Yeah, there's certainly a look at me, look what I've done attitude among certain members of the industry. For example, we're in Dorset now. I love Sika deer, it's my favourite venison. I'm chest shooting today, because it's for me, and I don't really care about what a game dealer wants because it's going in my chiller, and this is Christmas roast coming up. So when I'm shooting for myself, it's traditional heart and lung, because I want an animal on the ground, I want an animal in my chiller, and ultimately I want Sunday roast.
And you may, I mean, Sika can be difficult to get on, all deer can be difficult to get on in some situations, but once you are starting to push those ranges out 100 yards, 150 yards, you've got to allow yourself a margin of error, haven't you?
100%. Yeah, 100%. Also, the windage at that range as well now becomes more of an issue. There's just more variables. You start pushing past 100 yards, the variables increase, the power of the bullet increases, the microclimates in the wind over there that you can't account for on the way. You're risking the animal's welfare, and it's just, I'm sorry, but I disagree with that. So anything past 100, 125, instantly I'm on to chest. Or I just simply won't put them in the larder. If I'm culling for an estate, or I'm culling for a particular order for venison, well, I'm sorry, I didn't fulfil that one. I'll come back tomorrow. And, I'm not risking the animal's welfare. It's not on.
Paul, that's been really useful. I think it's been an interesting subject that a lot of people talk about, and we all have our preferences for where we shoot for. personally, my advice for would be any recreational stalker that's getting out there, if you want to consume that carcass, cut generously around that wound channel if you need to. You can cut that away, you can lose the shoulders if you need to, but for me, it's just not worth the risk of injuring a deer.
I agree entirely. I mean, the dog won't complain about the scraps. I've never had a complaint from a dog yet, so that's, you know, it still gets used, it still gets utilised. But you're entirely right. If you're recreational stalking for your own larder, stalking for your own friends and family, etc., in the boiler room every time, because margin of error is so much greater, and ultimately, as I say, it's about welfare.
So what can we conclude from our conversation? Well, I think for me, the takeaway is that if you're a recreational deer stalker and perhaps you're not getting out that often, go for that heart and lung shot. It gives you the greatest margin of success. If, however, you are producing hundreds of deer carcasses, as is the case with Paul for approved game handling establishments, well, there's an economic argument to make sure that you are producing carcasses in A1 condition, and that requires neck shooting. For me, and I think probably for Paul, head shooting, well, it's just not worth the risk. Thanks for watching.